Atlanta's metro is becoming a data center powerhouse, whether we're ready or not. Billions of dollars are being poured into Georgia's red clay right now. And it's not for offices, retail, or housing. It's data centers. And if you own property here or you're thinking about moving, you need to understand what that actually means. After 28 years in this market, here's the honest breakdown. Why Atlanta is attracting so many data centers. I would say there's a reason the biggest tech companies keep landing in Atlanta. And it comes down to a very specific mix of things that you really don't see at this scale in other markets. The first thing we need to talk about is geography. Atlanta sits right in the center of the Southeast fiber network, and that matters a lot for this type of infrastructure. When companies are trying to reduce latency, which is basically the delay between when you request data and when it shows up, they need to be close to where people actually are. And the Southeast is one of the fastest growing parts of the country, so Atlanta ends up being the natural hub. The second is land. Compared to places like Northern Virginia or markets like Los Angeles or New York, Atlanta still has large industrial sites available and at a much lower cost. Maybe that's been one of the biggest advantages here. That said, as more of that land gets taken, that gap is going to start closing. And then third, Georgia has had a sales tax exemption on data center equipment since 2018. That lowers the cost to build here compared to a lot of other states. I'll come back to that when we talk about what's changing, because that piece is actively shifting right now. Stay with me. Now, when you put all of that together, Metro Atlanta had nearly 4,000 megawatts of data center space under construction by late 2025, which is a record for this region. This place is clearly on the radar, but what these facilities actually bring to the areas around them, that's a more layered conversation than most people expect. Speaking of what's actually happening across Metro Atlanta, if you're trying to figure out where to focus your search and which areas make sense for you, I can give you a very clear read on how things look right now. My contact info is in the description below. Now let's keep going. The reality, what data centers actually bring. Let me give you a real example here. In parts of Fayette County, you'll notice the roads are well maintained, the parks are in good shape, and local services are funded at a level you don't always see in similar areas. A big part of that comes from buildings most people have never stepped inside and never will. Data centers don't function like traditional job drivers. During construction, you do get a real wave of activity and jobs. But once they're up and running, the staffing is very lean. In most cases, you're looking at fewer than 50 full-time employees. These buildings are designed around power, cooling, and security, not people. They look more like large warehouses. You're not getting foot traffic or the kind of street activity you would see with office or retail. So if you're thinking this is going to change walkability or bring in restaurants, it doesn't. And I think it's important to be clear about that. Where they do have an impact is on the tax side. The QTS facility in Fayette County now brings in over $1 million a year for the county. A few years ago, that number was around $31,000. That difference goes into infrastructure and local services, whether you're paying attention to it or not. And as we get into real estate, you'll see that some parts of the metro area feel that impact and others really don't. I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, at a broader level, these are infrastructure projects, not lifestyle additions. They generate tax revenue without adding pressure to things like parking or day-to-day demand. But the piece that starts to show up for residents is the power side, and that's where this becomes more relevant in everyday life. Power demand and infrastructure pressure. If you own a home in the outer western or southern parts of the metro area, this is the part you want to pay attention to right now, and I'll explain why. Data centers use a lot of power. The cooling systems run all day, every day, all year. When you add that across dozens of sites and thousands of megawatts, it puts real pressure on the power grid, and that requires a response. The Georgia Public Service Commission approved a plan for Georgia Power to add close to 10 gigawatts of new capacity to keep up. About 80% of that is expected to go to data centers. That means new gas plants and a large expansion of transmission across the region over the next 10 years. Now, where this starts to show up locally is with the infrastructure. There's a new 35-mile high voltage transmission line planned across Fayette, Fulton, and Coweta counties, with construction expected around 2028. If you're near those paths, you're going to see clearing, grading, and new substations. This is permitted work, and it's moving forward. Georgia Power has kept base rates steady for residential customers through 2028, so you're not seeing this in your bill right now. And House Bill 1063, which passed the House in February, is meant to keep the cost of new power for data centers from shifting onto residential customers. It's still in process, but it's something to watch. The other thing I would flag, especially if you're looking in Fayette County, is that some homeowners near existing sites have raised concerns about ongoing noise and lighting. This tends to be limited to properties right next to industrial zoning. So if you're looking in those areas, zoning next door is one of the first things you want to check. All of this feeds directly into how the housing market looks in these areas, and it doesn't show up the same way everywhere. Real estate impact, where it shows up. I think this is where a lot of people get mixed up, so let me walk you through it. What's going on with data centers is affecting land values in industrial corridors much more than it's affecting residential home prices. And that gap is where most of the confusion comes from. These facilities are going into industrial zones, large parcels, the right zoning, access to fiber, access to power. They're not going into established, walkable neighborhoods. Midtown, Buckhead, Virginia Highland, Candler Park, those areas are operating on completely different drivers. If you're looking in town, this really doesn't show up in your day-to-day. The outer suburban areas are where it starts to look different, and I'll give you two examples. Douglasville on the west side has a median price in the low 300s right now. That market has actually cooled over the past year, and homes are sitting longer. There is real data center investment there. Microsoft is building in Douglasville, Palmetto, and East Point, but that hasn't pushed residential prices up in a meaningful way so far. Fayette County is moving differently. Median prices are up about 11% year over year, and homes are selling faster than what you're seeing on the west side. That growth is being driven more by Trilith Studios and the U.S. Soccer National Training Center, but the broader infrastructure in that area is part of what's supporting that demand. At a bigger level, the signal here is real. The billions going into this region from companies like AWS, Microsoft, and Google reflect a long-term commitment to Atlanta. That kind of investment supports job growth and keeps the region relevant, even if the facilities themselves don't bring a lot of permanent jobs. And that's the lens you want to use going into the final piece, the bigger picture. So the question is, should this change your moving plans? After 28 years of watching this market change and helping hundreds of families move through it, my honest answer is, it depends on where you're planning to live. And I think a lot of people are focused on the wrong thing here. If you're moving in town, Midtown, Buckhead, Inman Park, Virginia Highland, this doesn't factor into your decision at all. Those areas are shaped by walkability, the Beltline, access to transit, and the character of the neighborhood. What's happening out in the industrial corridors doesn't really carry over into those markets. If you're looking more on the west side around Douglasville or south toward Fayette County, then awareness matters more. Not because data centers are automatically an issue, but because things like nearby industrial zoning, transmission lines, and which parcels sit close to active sites, those are details your agent should be looking into before you go under contract. That's just part of doing proper due diligence. At a broader level, I think of data centers as infrastructure that sits in the background. They generate a lot of tax revenue, but they don't show up in your day-to-day day the way other types of development do. And the level of investment coming into this region is a strong long-term signal. Georgia is now the second largest data center market in the country, with long-term capital committed here. On the legislative side, there's also something worth keeping an eye on. Senate Bill 410 has been moving through the Georgia legislature in March. The goal is to remove the sales tax exemption for new data center equipment going forward, while still honoring projects that are already approved. If that passes, it could slow down future development. I wouldn't base a purchase decision on that, but it's helpful context as this evolves. At the end of the day, the main factors for your move are the same ones they've always been. Where you're actually living, what your commute looks like, what's happening in that specific neighborhood, and what fits your budget right now. Atlanta's infrastructure story and its neighborhood story are two different conversations. And when those get mixed together, that's usually when people start making decisions based on the wrong reference point. Data centers do tell you something real about where this city and the metro area are headed, but they don't tell you which specific area is the right fit for your day-to-day. If you're weighing a move into Metro Atlanta and want an honest read on where things actually stand right now, email me at hello@vcgrealty.com. I'd love to help you. And the video I've linked next breaks down the 7 most underrated neighborhoods in Midtown Atlanta. That one's worth watching before you start a search. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.